Florida bans teaching critical race theory in schools. Huh. Well, that's some good news. Hello, and welcome to my channel. I am the anti-woke warrior. I will let all of my subscribers and regular viewers know that I changed the name of my channel. You know, I wasn't able to search and find my channel, and it's been that way ever since I took the name The Ordeal, which is when I started this channel. I like the name The Ordeal, but if it's not going to promote my channel, then it's probably something I should not have. We'll see if I do any better with Anti-Woke Warrior, but that's why that change happened. Moving on to this article here. Now, this is by CNN. These are people that agree with critical race theory, so they're going to have, I'm sure, wonderful things to say about this turn of events. Florida has become the latest state to ban critical race theory, continuing the growing change by Republican lawmakers against schools teaching about systemic racism. After hours of debate and public comment Thursday, the Florida State Board of Education unanimously approved the amendment banning critical race theory. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who appointed much of the board, spoke ahead of the meeting, saying critical race theory would teach children the country is rotten and that our institutions are illegitimate. Yeah, that's what it teaches. It teaches that that white people are inherently evil. They have original sin. That is not worth any taxpayer dollars, he said. Yeah, it's not. It's not worth taxpayer dollars to teach that I'm evil just because I'm white. The amendment states topics must be factual and objective, and specifically prohibits the teaching of critical race theory, meaning the theory that racism is not merely the product of prejudice, but that racism is embedded in American society and its legal systems in order to uphold the supremacy of white persons. Yeah. Critical race theory teaches that, it's all over the place, that you can't get away from it, that it's just part of white culture and white people, and there's no way of getting away from it, and that racism can only come from white people and white culture. The amendment also bans the material from the 1619 Project, a Pulitzer Prize-winning initiative by the New York Times that reframed American history around the date of August 1619, when the first slave ship arrived on America's shores. Yeah, that's been debunked dozens of times. We can see that very clearly when we look at things like, hey, you know, Columbus actually, 1492, started the slave trade in North America. Not 1619. What the 1619 Project says is that when the first slave ship arrived carrying African slaves, that's when the country was founded. It literally said that in the original text. They've gone through and amended it so that it doesn't say that anymore. Nikole Hannah-Jones has also denied this. She's one of the authors of the 1619 Project, but you can find quotes of the original document on the internet saying clearly that she claimed that the country was founded in 1619 when the first black African slaves arrived on the shores. I think it's in Virginia. Now, that means one of two things. Either the country was founded when black people first arrived, or the country was founded when slavery first started in the continent. Well, it couldn't have been when slavery first started because Columbus took slaves. The very early explorers of North America and South America took slaves. The Spanish were renowned for this. So it has to be when black people came here. And Nikole Hannah-Jones also says that black people are the only true Americans. They are the best Americans. They are the best at democracy, even though we have a constitutional republic and not a democracy in this country. She, I'm sure, doesn't know that because she's uneducated. So what they're saying is that black people make this country America. That's not true. The founding of the country was done by white people. They were the ones who wrote all of the laws, who determined what the laws should be, what kind of government we should have, that determined where the boundaries of the colonies were. They also are responsible for the Louisiana Purchase. No black people were involved in any of that. None. So the country was formed by white people. It just was. I don't know what to tell you other than that's just how it is. Audience members against the amendment chanted, "Allow teachers to teach the truth," during public comments. Yeah, that's what this amendment is doing. In a statement posted to Twitter, DeSantis said the amendment protects students from being indoctrinated to think a certain way, mirroring language used by other states and locales that have made similar moves. Critical race theory teaches kids to hate our country and to hate each other. It is state-sanctioned racism and has no place in Florida schools. Right. State-sanctioned racism against white people. And I like how this image here of the protesters, you see, oh, look, I'm just going to go through and count all the people I can clearly see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people that I can clearly see protesting. 7 people. I can't actually tell if she's protesting. I'm going to go ahead and say that she is, and she's standing with the protesters. Out of those 7 people, how many of them are black? Oh, 1. Out of those 7 people, how many of them are white? Oh, 6. These are white people standing against white people. These fools that think that they will be spared if there is a race war. And I noticed that all but one of them is a woman. What do you think would happen to you as a white woman siding with people who are not white in a race war? Use your imagination. I'm sure you can figure it out. Critical race theory has become politicized in recent months. It's always been about politics. Not because I want it to be about politics, but because the people who push critical race theory are all about politics. With opponents arguing the area of study is based on Marxism and is a threat to the American way of life. It is based on Marxism. It's well known. But critical race theory, according to scholars who study it, explores the ways in which a history of inequality and racism in the United States has continued to impact American society today. Oh, yeah, it really doesn't. There's a tiny bit probably that does, but that's it. It's an approach to grappling with history of white supremacy that rejects the belief that what's in the past is in the past and that the laws and systems that grow from the past are detached from it. Kimberle Crenshaw, a founding critical race theorist and a law professor at UCLA and Columbia University, told CNN last year. Oh, let's take a look and see some other things that Kimberle Crenshaw has to say.
Intersectionality is just a metaphor for understanding the ways that multiple forms of inequality or disadvantage sometimes compound themselves.
So it's a metaphor. That's all it is? That's all critical race theory is a metaphor? So it's something we can completely ignore? It's just a metaphor? Okay. Metaphors don't matter. They're simply a type of comparison.
Intersectionality isn't so much a grand theory, it's a prism for understanding certain kinds of problems. African American girls are 6 times more likely to be suspended than white girls. That's probably a race and a gender problem. It's not just a race problem, it's not just a gender problem.
Really? Then how come you compared black girls to white girls? I mean, if it's not just a race problem, how come you compared the same genders? Doesn't make any sense.
Identity isn't simply a self-contained unit, it is a...
No, it's a self-contained unit. In a free society where you're not supposed to be prejudiced against people based on their external characteristics, and where the vast majority of the people in the country also frown on people judging others by their external characteristics, it's individual.
So schools do a good job when they understand that and when they commit themselves to curricular development, to opportunities in the school for all students to understand the histories that have brought us to this particular moment. You can't change outcomes without understanding how they've come about. So independent schools can take the lead on that to be responsive to their student populations and to the communities out of which the students come.
Yeah, it wouldn't be a problem if simply you didn't have this notion that is interlaced with critical race theory that white culture is evil. So when we expect students to behave a certain way, we're saying, well, you expect me, the student says, well, you expect me to be white, and I'm not white. But the fact of the matter is, if you want to succeed in our culture in the United States, you have to act in a certain way. When the Smithsonian is putting out documents saying that, hey, being on time and capitalism are whiteness. No, they're not. Hard work is not whiteness. Being on time is not whiteness. Capitalism is not whiteness. They're simply systems that exist in the world.
I actually read about Emma's story from the pages of a legal opinion written by a judge who had dismissed Emma's claim of race and gender discrimination against a local car manufacturing plant. Emma sought better employment for her family and for others. She wanted to create a better life for her children and for her family. But she applied for a job and she was not hired, and she believed that she was not hired because she was a black woman. Now, the judge in question dismissed Emma's suit. And the argument for dismissing the suit was that the employer did hire African Americans and the employer hired women. The real problem, though, that the judge was not willing to acknowledge was what Emma was actually trying to say, that the African Americans that were hired, usually for industrial jobs, maintenance jobs, were all men. And the women that were hired, usually for secretarial or front office work, were all white. Only if the court was able to see how these policies came together would he be able to see the double discrimination that Emma DeGraffenreid was facing.
So this is the case that she claims caused her to formulate intersectionality. She is the supposed founder of intersectionality, as we can see here. And the thing is, her analysis of the case doesn't say whether or not this woman, Emma, was qualified to work in the plant at all. Maybe it wasn't discrimination. Maybe it was her being unqualified. It's possible. I mean, I don't know. I don't know the case. I haven't looked into the case. But I suspect that there's more to it than just, oh, I was discriminated against because I'm a woman or because I'm black or both. Because we see this happening all the time. Centoya Brown, I did a video on Centoya Brown. I don't know if you can watch it in the United States because it has been limited on YouTube. Centoya Brown shot Johnny Allen in the back of the head. and she did not serve her full sentence. Her sentence was commuted because she was considered the victim in the scenario because she was a minor who was forced out onto the streets to prostitute herself by her street thug pimp, Cutthroat. And Johnny Allen was asleep. This was a man who brought her into his home, fed her, let her bathe herself, etc. He verbally offered her love and affection moving forward in her life. And then she shot him in the back of the head while he was sleeping. And her sentence was commuted because, she's the victim. She was just a poor, innocent little girl who didn't know any better. Yeah, if she had killed Cutthroat, I would agree. But she didn't kill her pimp. She killed a man who was offering good things to her. So that's how I just take this with a grain of salt. It's like, yeah, okay, you want to make all this stuff be about race all the time or about gender all the time, and it's usually not. Let's see what else she has to say. It's so brilliant.
African Americans who have been killed within the last 2 years. Only one thing distinguishes the names that you know from the names that you don't know: gender. So let me first...
Yeah, gender explains why I don't know the names of any of the white men who've been killed by the police in the last 2 years. That's what makes that important. No, it has nothing to do with gender. It has to do with the fact that the media wants to play up this notion that black men are being hunted down, innocent black men are being hunted down and killed by the police. And that's just not true.
Black girls as young as 7, great-grandmothers as old as 95 have been killed by the police. They've been killed in their living rooms, in their bedrooms. They've been killed in their cars. They've been killed on the street. They've been killed in front of their parents, and they've been killed in front of their children. They have been shot to death. They have been stomped to death. They have been suffocated to death. They have been manhandled to death. They have been tasered to death. They've been killed when they've called for help. They've been killed when they were alone, and they've been killed when they were with others. They have been killed shopping while black, driving while black, having a mental disability while black, having a domestic disturbance while black. They've even been killed being homeless while black. They've been killed talking on the cell phone, laughing with friends, sitting in a car reported as stolen, and making a U-turn in front of the White House with an infant strapped in the backseat of the car. Why don't we know these stories?
Same reason we don't know the stories of white men, white women who have been killed by the police, Asian men, Asian women who have been killed by the police, mixed race men and women who have been killed by the police, and Hispanic men and women who have been killed by the police, because the media doesn't cover that. Now, are the police more aggressive, more likely to draw and shoot when they're dealing with a black person? From what I've seen, yes, they are. But that doesn't change the fact that the police kill more white people in this country than they do any other race of people. The police kill more men in this country than they do women, by far. Okay? So, yes, they disproportionately kill black people. Why is that? Is that because the police are bad actors? Or is that because the black victims of these shootings are bad actors? I'm going to guess it's a little bit of both, but mostly because the black people are more likely to be bad actors in the United States because they are considered, they're not the dregs of society, but they're considered lower class. They're usually poor, and there's a societal view that this is what I gather, right? That they're considered lower class. They're considered more likely to be criminals, more likely to be violent. But they also seem to act more violently than of the members of other races do. And I have a sneaky suspicion that it goes back to family and the fact that they're less likely to have a stable family environment. You want to talk about stable family environment, look at the Asians. Then look at the Hispanics. You'll see like 5 generations living in one house in a Hispanic family. Then you can go to the whites, and then finally the blacks are like, 75% of blacks are being raised in a single-parent household? Something ridiculous like that. Okay, so that was this Kimberle Crenshaw person who is ever so wonderful. She is responsible for creating critical race theory and for creating intersectionality. Let's get back to the article. And yet across the country, local boards of education and states are pushing against teaching the impact of systemic racism and critical race theory in schools. Right, because it's all bullshit. Calling it indoctrination. Yes, that's what it is. It is indoctrination. You're indoctrinating people into this cult religion. Idaho, for example, passed a bill in May banning teaching in any public schools that any sex, race, ethnicity, religion, color, or national origin is inherently superior or inferior, which, according to that bill, was often found in critical race theory. Yes, it is. It says right in there that white people are superior to everyone else. Inadvertently, it says that, and they should be punished because of it. And it also says Asians are similar to whites in their superiority. Tennessee has banned teaching it too. Good. That's 3 states. Let's get the other 47. Locally, the debate has surged as well. In Florida, a teacher is suing a local school district for allegedly retaliating after she spoke up about racism and hung a Black Lives Matter flag. Yes. So this person right here that spoke up about racism in the public school and hung a Black Lives Matter flag needs to be fired, needs to be imprisoned for terrorism, basically. Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization. And in Texas, the small town became divided over an attempt to address racism in its local schools, with a group of residents, politicians, and a local political action committee vehemently opposing critical race theory, claiming it would indoctrinate children according to extremely liberal beliefs. I wouldn't call it extremely liberal beliefs because there's nothing liberal about these beliefs. It's this cult religion is all it is. So what do prominent racists who support critical race theory say about this stuff? Let's take a look here. So Ibram X. Kendi is suggesting that the solution to the problem of racism is more racism. Is the cure for racism really more racism? Christopher Rufo misses the main problem with critical race theory, the truth about critical race theory. He did an op-ed on October 5th. Yes, it is dehumanizing political indoctrination. Okay. Like I've been saying, its real vice is that it teaches people to commit constitutional violations. Yes, it does. It promotes widespread discrimination against people of white or Asian ancestry. The most frequently cited critical race theorist, Ibram X. Kendi, perhaps the most evil person in the United States, makes this explicit. As he puts it, the only remedy to racist discrimination is anti-racist discrimination. The only remedy to past discrimination is present discrimination. The only remedy to present discrimination is future discrimination. So he is claiming that all white people are racist when he says anti-racist discrimination. So this doesn't really make any sense. If somebody's an anti-racist, why would you discriminate against them? The discrimination critical race theorists want to remedy through still more discrimination is any failure to meet the racial quota, as Mr. Kendi puts it. When I see racial disparities, I see racism. So if a nuclear weapons lab is full of Asians and whites, not blacks, he sees it as racism, even if everybody was legally hired based solely on their qualifications, not their race, right? So he wants to have just a bunch of black people working in these highly technical careers, whether they're educated in that way or not. If you think that this is black versus white, which it seems to come down to all too often, well, here we go. We got the Tutsi and the Hutu. Take a look at them. Okay, they're comparing very superficial difference. I see 2 black men. I see 6 black men here. I don't see, oh, look, this one, the bridge of his nose is different. Therefore, he's a different group. No, they're black people. That's all that I see here. Black men. But this is true. This has been true throughout human history. The Europeans did it to other Europeans. The blacks do it to other blacks. Africans do it to other Africans. The Asians are doing it to each other all the time. I know because I'm around. My wife tells me there's Asian countries she can't go to because if she goes there, they'll understand that she is not of their country and she'll be killed because of the way that she looks. When I was in college, there were students from the Middle East who were like, I can't go to that country because they'll know that I'm from my country and they will kill me because they think that I'm an animal and I'm a piece of garbage. That's how these other groups of people, not just white people, operate. White people have gone to great lengths to root that out of us as a community, as a culture. We've gone to great lengths to say, look, we're going to accept everybody. We're accepting of everybody. It doesn't matter what you look like. What you look like is not important. Your religion is not important. Everybody has a different religion. What we want to say is what's important is what's inside of your heart. Well, I don't know any other group of people who have done it as much as the Europeans. We're the bad guys because, oh, look, they're still racism. Oh, look, things are not even. The sweeping perpetual discrimination advocated by critical race theorists violates Supreme Court decision like Richmond v. J.A. Crolson. Hans Batter, Arlington, Virginia. Those of us who are critical of critical race theory cling to the belief that a racist is one who treats people differently based on the color of their skin rather than the content of their character. The racial sensitivity training that President Trump suspended for federal employees, however, is based on the belief that the only way to exercise America's systemic racism is to make privileged white people realize that they are racist because of their skin color, regardless of their character or heart. Now, this, of course, was reinstated by Biden. Yay! So the banning of the critical race theory basically in federal buildings, federal institutions, it said, yeah, you couldn't teach critical race theory, you couldn't have anything promoting critical race theory in the government. The required confessions of white privilege or male privilege or heterosexual privilege indicate that we have advanced into a Maoist phase of reprogramming. China's Red Guards began by launching an attack on the four old customs, cultures, habits, and ideas. Symbols of old China were destroyed. Chinese wokeness sessions about the evils of capitalism were called struggle sessions. In China, it was proletariat versus bourgeoisie and communist versus capitalist, while in America, it is social justice victim versus white privilege beneficiary, anti-fascist and democratic socialist versus capitalist and college-educated progressive versus deplorable. Step 1 for redemption is hi. I admit that I am powerless over racism and I make the lives of my victims unmanageable. A coerced or brainwashed confession is not necessarily good for the soul or, for that matter, racial harmony, but it might be good for one's career. Adam Graham, Charleston, South Carolina. It seems like yesterday when educators demanded that every child's self-esteem be reinforced with the warning that not to do so would result in psychological and emotional damage to them as adults. Now the message is, if you're a minority, you are a needy victim, and if you're white, you are guilty and should be ashamed. Yeah, so I think all this self-esteem, this whole like, hey, get your emotional well-being in order, self-esteem, rah rah rah, you're the best, not allowed to shame anybody or say anything bad about anybody, has contributed to critical race theory, because people are going, well, my life is garbage, how can it be garbage? I'm the best, I'm the greatest. Well, because you're not the best, you're not the greatest, you're just not. Very few human beings are the best at anything, or, at the top of their game at anything. All right, so, that's all that I got for this time. Thank you for watching. I do appreciate everybody stopping by. Please like, comment, share, subscribe, click the notification bell, and I will see you all in the next video.